The scenario that we played was Desecration. For this particular scenario, you each have 3 objectives that you place in your own table half, and the objective is to both protect those objectives and go out and destroy the objectives of your enemy. So unlike the other scenarios, you can actually attack the objectives for this particular scenario. They have an armor of 5 in melee and 6 against shooting, and they also double the number of defense dice that they receive. So you're normally, with a reasonable unit, you should be able to destroy it quite easily. Furthermore, you also don't get fatigue when you do fight in melee with it. What these objectives do is they control the amount of slaughter points that you can score at the end of the game. So you need to balance protecting your own objectives, since this caps how many slaughter points your enemy can gain, and also go out and destroy as many objectives as you can on your enemy's table half. So it's a really interesting scenario. It doesn't slow you down, for example, by having to transport any objectives or anything like that. So for my Pagan Peoples warband, who's actually very lightly armored, I think this might actually be a pretty good scenario. I am playing with the Pagan Peoples, and my opponent is trying out the Polish board for the first time. Our army composition are, for my board, it's for my Pagan Peoples, it's very simple. It's 3 units, or 3 points of warriors split into 4 units of 6, and then 3 points of mounted Hearthguard with javelins split into 2 units of 6, and then the warlord. My opponent has taken also 3 points of Hearthguard. Half of them are mounted in a unit of 6, and half of them are on foot without any special options. 2 units of warriors without any special equipment, and 1 unit of levy with bows, and then the mounted warlord. We rolled off, and I won the roll to be the first player. So I deployed my 4 units of warriors armed with bows. You can see them in the picture. There are 2 units in the cornfield on the left protecting my first objective, and then there are 2 units hiding in the forest at the bottom right hand corner. You can't see the third objective, but it's right in the corner of the board in the woods. My opponent then deployed their entire warband, going from left to right. We have the 6 mounted Hearthguard, the unit of levy in the woods protecting my opponent's front objective, then a unit of 8 warriors with no equipment, and then a unit of 6 Hearthguard on foot, the warlord behind them, and then finally, all the way to the right, the final group of 8 warriors. I then deployed my remaining warband, so I deployed my 2 units of 6 mounted Hearthguard javelins and my warlord in the middle. So one important note is that the first player, which is me in this particular battle, cannot use any advanced Saga abilities or do any shooting or charges the first turn. So that really limits what you can actually do. In my turn, since I can't do anything, I just rolled my 3 dice and stayed back, waiting to see what my opponent would do. My opponent did get his full 6 dice, so he used it to use the Void ability, which allows you to move any number of foot units away from your warlord. So he moved them forward, medium, same thing with the archers, and then he moved his unit of 6 Hearthguard all the way to the back, so they would be out of javelin range from my 2 units the next turn. During my turn 2, I rolled not particularly well. Luckily I had a rare dice already on my board from my first turn, but I did not manage to roll another rare dice, which limits my damage output, since I cannot use the Terra Avita ability, which gives you +2 attack dice for any shooting or melee you engage in for every single unit that turn. So I loaded it up on just the normal activations, and since none of his units had any fatigue of them, I didn't bother putting it on any of my abilities that give me bonuses. He had hold the line on his battle board and activated it, so that's an orders reaction, so it gives any foot units in the Polish warband resilience 2 in melee. So I definitely was not going to charge any of them, so I decided just to run forward with both of my Hearthguard on with javelins, throw twice, and then run them back to their starting position. So that's why you see the 2 fatigues on each of the Hearthguard units and 1 fatigue on the Warlord, since I just went up and threw. As you can see, I didn't do that well, so all these javelins firing twice only managed to kill 6 warriors overall. So a little bit disappointing. However, he did lose a dice, so I guess that's not too bad. So at the end of my turn, I'm going kind of ready to receive the charge or get something with already 2 fatigues on my Hearthguard units. I also shot one of my archer units on the right hand side at his warriors on the right hand side twice. However, I only managed to do 1 kill on them. So again, pretty mediocre shooting, but we'll see how that packs out in the coming turns. Polish turn 2. My opponent moves up his line using the Voivode ability again. So that's really efficient. Using a rare dice, you can move up any number of units that are within M of the Warlord. He uses this plus an extra activation using the no quarter ability to charge my unit of bowmen hiding in the forest. He manages to kill 2. I do not make any casualties on him, so I retreat. My turn 3. Since my unit of warriors is now down to just 2 warriors, I'm throwing 1 less dice, so that brings me to 6 dice in total. I roll reasonably. I've got the Medza Mate ability, which gives me a teleportation ability between 2 pieces of uneven terrain. And I roll another 6, including my actually, I rolled 2 rare dice, so I can use the Terra Avita ability, which is the one that gives me 2 dice for each melee or shooting attack that I engage in, and it also allows me to place another dice on the Umber Pirama ability, so that gives me 3 activations for 1 rare dice. So I decided to go all in on the Warlord. I rested my units, which had 2 fatigues, and then I run them in and throw javelins at the Warlord. Since he's mounted, he has a reduced armor against shooting weapons, so I thought even if he takes off, if he moves all of his wounds over to his Hearthguard, which are within short of him, is still a favorable outcome for me, since they are buffed up using the Hold the Line ability, which gives them resilience, and they also have an armor of 5 against shooting, so I thought this would probably be the best option for me. So I use my 1 unit to shoot twice, and then I charge in with my 2nd unit of mounted Hearthguard, and I managed to get one casualty on my side, and he takes a fatigue, and then also takes off 4 Hearthguard. So that's a reasonable reasonable trade-off. However, I was obviously hoping for either taking off the entire Hearthguard unit to reduce him by 1 dice, or to be able to kill the Warlord. So I actually think this is the moment where I managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So let's just do a little bit of analysis. This picture I took almost shows what I wanted to show. So it shows how my turn ended. You can see I have fatigue on my 2 mounted Hearthguard units. When I did my throwing attack and also my retreating attack, for some reason I was worried about getting attacked by the single or by the unit of Hearthguard, since I wasn't sure if he was just going to get his Warlord killed or use the bodyguards you rule to soak up the wounds. So I actually moved them back towards the levee, or in front of the levee, and then also moved my when I retreated from the Warlord, I also moved my unit that charged kind of in that general direction as well. So one thing I did not think about, since I was kind of focused on this little area around here, was the still very threatening unit of 6 mounted Hearthguard, which he's hidden behind the top right hand or top left hand corner of this particular photo. So you can see that I've kind of actually left my the rear of my battle line exposed here. So start of the Polish turn, he activated his levy to shoot at the my mounted Hearthguard standing in front of them. They did 3 kills, which is kind of what you'd expect. It's not too amazing rolling, so that's reasonable. And then something I completely overlooked, and was a very good catch by my opponent, was that my unit was 2L away from the mounted Hearthguards up in the corner. So he takes a fatigue and does the move and then the charge, and then absolutely obliterates my unit. One tactical mistake which I keep making is that I try to use the fatigue of my enemy instead of just letting it sit on there. So what I do is I try to save my unit, increase my armor a little bit, but obviously 6 knights charging 3 knights, that's going to end badly, especially when my armor is only 4, given that I have javelins. So he absolutely obliterates that unit, and then he has another activation and charges it into the next unit of Hearthguard, again completely obliterating that unit. So right now I'm going from feeling pretty good about my last turn to absolutely being scared about my Warlord or my Warband completely disintegrating. And it's a very good move from my opponent, and definitely a learning moment. Another thing I keep forgetting is that I should really just keep the fatigue on a unit like that. It would allow me to just cancel an activation if the unit has 2 fatigue, or if the unit is exhausted, it gives me a good opportunity in my turn to counterattack without taking too much damage. Start of Pagan Peoples turn 4. I only have 4 dice that I can roll now, having lost my 2 units of Hearthguard. So I managed to not roll any rare dice, which severely limits my activation ability. So what I end up doing is placing 2 dice on my Warlord activation, and then using my Lima ability, which is an ability that gains 2 attack dice, and then also it gives you 2 automatic hits on your targets, or gives you the number of automatic hits as they have fatigue. So for my particular target, which was my enemy Warlord, he had 2 fatigue on it already, so I charge in with a rested Warlord, do 2 automatic hits, and then have the 8 normal dice plus 2 bonus dice. So I managed to kill the warlord. He moves some. He does well, since he can see that the warlord wouldn't be saved by using the bodyguards rule. He decides to just keep his 2 Hearthguard alive and just take the fatigue on all the units around it. I do take 2 wounds, which is unfortunate, and then I do my final activation to get out of there and move towards my unit of warriors hiding in the woods on his half of the table edge. However, this is a little bit of a desperate move, since anywhere I go I could be chased down by the opponent anyway. With my We Obey activation, I take my unit of warriors who are hiding in the woods and then charge them out to destroy the objective in melee, since the objective only has armor of 5 in melee and 6 in against shooting. So I decide I'm going to just risk it and run out and hit it 6 times. So I managed to destroy it, and then my unfortunately my unit is kind of half in the woods, half sticking out. And using my final dice, I charge the unit of warriors who are threatening my 2 objectives with my bow warriors. Right now I'm just hoping to knock out actually 1 warrior, so that he goes underneath the limit of 4. So I managed to do enough casualties, which brings down the unit of warriors below the level, so he loses a dice, which is a pretty good result for me. Moving on to the Polish turn 4. So Polish turn 4, he loads up his board ready to charge my exhausted warlord. So I, unsurprisingly, he manages to absolutely destroy the warlord. However, he doesn't have enough activations to continue on and destroy my unit of warriors, which are kind of out in the open, luckily. So they manage to survive for another turn. He does attack the objective and manages to destroy it with his now tiny unit of warriors, which is good for him since it increases the cap for the slaughter points which count. So not a lot happens this turn except for my warlord dying, so that's so I suppose something does happen. But moving on to turn 5, both of our warbands are already kind of running out of steam, and we're starting to run out of dice. Pagan Peoples turn 5. This is actually the last turn that we're going to play. So I've only got, I think I'm rolling 2 dice at the moment, so all I do is take my unit of warriors, hide them in the forest, and at the same time charge the second objective to destroy it, which increases my cap a little bit on the number of slaughter points I can have. Except for that, I don't actually think I shoot anything or do any damage. My opponent also calculates that he can't actually make it to any of the objectives to destroy them, to increase his the cap in the amount of slaughter points, and I think he decides not to charge my units either, in order not to give me any chance of increasing the amount of slaughter points that I earn. So at the end we calculate it, and it's a tie. So even though I managed to destroy 2 objectives, I only just managed to get enough slaughter points to bring me over the cap. So if you destroy 1 objective, you're capped out at 16 slaughter points. If you're destroying 2 objectives, I think you're capped out at 24. So I think I managed to score 17, and my opponent scores a lot higher than me, but he's capped out at 16. So that's basically well, it is a tie. I was actually surprised. I felt like I was losing after his Hearthguard charging mine and completely destroying my warband. So I'm actually really happy with a tie. Definitely learned a lot. I only have to remember it, what I learned this particular time, and actually implement it for my next game. The Polish board is really interesting. this was the first time my opponent actually used it, so he was at a definite disadvantage. For the particular scenario, I think my pagan people definitely prefer scenarios where they can go out and kill things rather than having to transport objectives or defend any particular objective just using number of bodies, since the highest defense that I have in my warband is 4, so I really can't protect anything particularly well. So it was a really fun game, really interesting, learned a lot, and thank you for watching, and talk to you soon.